Welcome. In this episode of Awakening with Dr. C, we are going to be talking about the edification of the self, improving the self-concept to improve our life, to improve our connections. And what I have found is that when we are early on the awakening journey, spiritual awakening journey, consciousness expansion journey, whatever you want to identify with as in this framework, there is a process of awakening the mind, awakening the self, awakening the body, awakening the heart, awakening the spirit, and expanding the aperture, as Dr. Zach Bush says about consciousness, expanding the aperture of the level of information that we can take in and process. And with that comes extrasensory phenomenon, in some cases, comes increasing gifts and abilities, comes aligning with purpose and mission and expansion. For some of you, it will completely change how you show up in the world, how you create your reality. Hi, Lionel, nice to see you. And how you advance in your human incarnation here. And when we are early in the awakening process, what happens is we don't necessarily take responsibility for this thing that we call the self-concept. The self-concept is exactly as it's described. It is the image of ourselves that we house in here. In our conscious mind, in our perceptual experience, the self-referencing image that we carry is often, when we are early on the awakening journey, given to us. By who? By our parents, by our family, by our culture, by our upbringing, by relationship partners. And so what happens is that when we have a weak self-image, this can manifest as insecure attachment styles. This isn't the only root cause of insecure attachment styles like avoidant attachment or anxious preoccupied attachment or fearful avoidant, but it is a contributing factor, a significant one, I would say, because in all attachment styles, there is a wounded self-concept. It is not safe to be fully you. And so you learned how to behave to be accepted, to feel safe, to feel nurtured, to have your needs met, sometimes for affection, nurturing. As a kid, it may have been for food. It may have been for opportunities. You learn, you mold yourself, right? But this manifests as dysfunction later on because you're working from toxic love maps, because the self-image that you have of you being lovable for who you are, just as you were always supposed to be, a little baby crying in a crib or on a pallet or in your mother's arms, or being perhaps ignored, how you were handled, how you were treated, created a self-image. How you were then, you would go on to be treated in your childhood, your upbringing would reinforce, or in some cases destroy that self-image in very abusive or neglectful environments. Or if you were raised by a narcissist, then that self-image is very distorted, right? You have to regulate my emotions by being the perfect golden child that I want you to be. And if you don't, then you will experience hardship, pain, punitive damages to you, to your mind, to your body, to your soul. You know, like it can like really break you to be raised with anybody with any personality disorder. And so your self-image that you're carrying is obviously going to be very wounded. And then this manifests later on in life as things like an insecure attachment style. It's one of the reasons that I talk about it so much on my channel, because it is ubiquitously shared around the globe, around cultures. And it's interesting because when people have an insecure attachment style, they have challenges in relationships and in work, if they're entrepreneurs, if they're leaders, that they don't necessarily know are related and rooted in these early experiences. And so they repeat these cycles ad nauseum, sometimes with partners, business partners, with family, with relationship partners, not understanding when they're early in the process, not understanding why things are unfolding the way that they're unfolding. And so when we have a love map, when we have a toxic love map, a wounded love map, we often also, in parallel and in tandem, have a wounded self-concept. So the I version of you, the me, when you think about driving your avatar out into the world, that version, right? And the avatar is our human body. that being inside, the way you think about yourself, the way you talk to yourself, the way you go after some things but not others, what you think your value is, how you charge if you are an entrepreneur in a service-based business, how you lead, how you receive feedback, if you can receive constructive feedback at all. And very often those with an insecure attachment style struggle tremendously with this. This is what I work on in my one-on-one coaching with my clients that have insecure attachment styles. I give you constructive feedback so you can practice it in a safe container and be triggered and withdraw, or to not be able to handle it, right? We work through that. Sometimes not. Sometimes the clients get to a place where they decide that they can't confront themselves in that manner and they go their own way. It's part of the process. It's part of the learning process. You're still welcome here, by the way. If you ever get to that place, you're always still welcome on my channel. So, and you've walked away from our work, that it's okay. It's actually part of the process. Remember, early on, I told you that would happen, especially if you have avoidant attachment style, remember? And so trust the cycle, trust the process, because it's all part of the greater picture of healing that maybe I have a picture of as your coach that you aren't fully aware of yet. So when that self-concept is wounded, what happens is that you hold this image in your mind that is often worse than other people see you as. It's often torn down, damaged, degraded. And so as a result, you need a lot of reassurance from the world. This can take the form of accomplishments, success, money, having a beautiful spouse, a handsome spouse, prestige, going to the best of the best schools and universities, or circling in circles and clubs that are exclusive, because this validates the self-concept image that you have in your mind that compensates for, I'm not that wounded, right? I can see the outside world. The world is telling me I'm great, I'm fantastic. And so this is then helping me to ignore how I really feel about myself and shove that down. It's not healing. It's avoiding in its own right. It's distracting in its own right. I know for some of you that might not click yet, and that's okay. Just stay along for the journey with me, okay? And so when you receive this positive feedback from the world, that I'm amazing, I'm great, I'm whatever it is. It could be attention from a spouse, from a romantic interest. They're texting you back really fast. They're addicted to you. If you have any sort of anxious attachment style, you want them to be addicted to you, because that tells you that you're safe. Because actually the self-concept image deep down inside is that it's ringing that maybe you're not lovable. Maybe they don't actually really care about you the same way that you care about them. And so you need this constant reassurance. So when they're addicted to you, you feel safe in the relationship because they can't put their phone down without texting you or without calling you. And that gives you this sense of peace in your nervous system that everything's okay, as long as they're maintaining that heightened level of attention. Also, I see this in fearful avoidance a lot too, especially those that are leaning anxious. And so all of this rooted in your self-concept is there is an issue in how you see yourself being worthy of love, how you see yourself being able to express your needs and to have that be listened and honored by another partner. And so you see yourself as maybe not worthy of the commitment that you really deeply want, not worthy of the job that you really, really want. And so what happens is, in some cases, not all cases, you don't go for it, or you don't speak up. You don't actually express yourself authentically. And this was the latest masterclass that I produced in my True Love Masterminds group. If you need help with this, you can check the link in the bio. It's this community where you learn at your own pace. Everything is pre-recorded. There's no calls, and you can get help with your journey, or you can just work privately alone. There's no forced sharing in the group. I really don't like that. I don't like forced intimacy. And but that means that sometimes a group is quiet because people are doing their own thing and they're working on their own stuff, and you need to be okay with that. So as a result, you don't authentically express yourself because you feel deep down that you can't and that you shouldn't. And so that self-concept that's actually wounded, right? That's masquerading as this deeply connected attachment is a falsehood, but you haven't recognized it yet. Because as long as your partner is echoing that everything is fine, they're addicted to you, in the case of anxious attachment or fearful, avoidant, leaning anxious, then you feel safe. But this is an illusion. And as long as the world is opening up these doors of opportunity to you, in the case of especially avoidance that lean on prestige, success, and accomplishment, as long as those doors are opening and you're getting into the circles, you're getting into the rooms that you want to get in, this is feeding back that everything's okay. But what happens when that door closes? What happens when it's harder for you to open it? All of a sudden, you're thrust into this doom spiral. What happens when you achieve great wealth or success or notoriety in whatever your chosen field is, but deep down inside, you have this aching feeling like you're an imposter, or that you're going to lose it, or they're going to see through you? That's because the self-concept inside that you're carrying around is actually wounded. And so you're using the external world to validate and to compensate something that actually needs deeper healing. But when you're early in the journey, you don't know any of this, right? All you know is that you're moving through life. You're seizing the opportunities that you want. You're engaging with your relationship partner at a high level. You feel this connection. You feel the strength of the bond. And then all of a sudden they go quiet. Then all of a sudden your world's shaken upside down, and the truth of who you are and how you feel about yourself is revealed to you. The truth of who you are and how you really feel about yourself is revealed to you. And that triggered state is the gold mine. This is what I love helping my clients with. If you're triggered, this is the best time to work with me. Link is in the bio, one-on-one, if you feel the call for that. And you'll feel the call. It's a soul resonance. You'll know if it's for you. And so when you're in that state, and when you're fully present with it, which, by the way, when you're early on the journey, you have a hard time with, most people do, they turn to addictions, distractions, work, other people to take away that feeling. They numb, they distract, or they hedge their bets. And so they can start other relationships whenever they start to feel unsettled in theirs. They can start to solicit the attention of somebody who maybe has an eye for them that they've subconsciously known about, deep down knowing that they're probably self-sabotaging their union. It could be like a love of the life connection, but because they don't know how to sit with that discomfort, they don't know how to work through it, they start sabotaging and building other connection points. And guess what? When you advance in the awakening journey, your partner feels that even if they don't know it. When you really start opening up your heart, and this is what my latest episode on my Spotify podcast was, opening the heart. And when you really start to do that, the link for that is in the bio too. What you're going to do is you're going to create a resonance with your partner that is going to be undeniable. And what this means is your soul is going to connect with theirs. That's the whole point of opening the heart, right? You connect with this deeper connection, this deeper vibration. And when that soul connection builds, then you're connected no matter if you're talking or not. And this is also the foundation of a secure attachment. When you become securely attached, you feel the bond inside of you without needing to see the text. You feel how they're feeling. This is also if you're spiritually awakened. Most people, when they're living in a three-dimensional reality, construct of a reality, are confined to their five senses. This is what being early in the journey is all about. Some people call it unawake. I use that terminology sometimes too because it's a shortcut, because people know what that means, or unconscious, but it's not the whole picture. It's a spectrum of awakening. And when you're early in the journey, you don't have any of those extra feelings. So you need the compulsivity. You need the addiction to your partner to feel safe, because if you don't have the visual evidence, it's not true, because you don't know how to hold it inside. When you really start to expand your heart and your soul and your consciousness, you can tap into the connection at any point. I know how it's not all the time. I know how some of my clients are doing and feeling, even when we're not engaged in work. I know how exes are feeling towards me, even when we're perhaps engaging in a conversation on the surface that is a little bit different, and if they have any sort of reservations or any sort of resentment that they're still holding on, I can feel that. Or if there's actually a deep soul connection that's still there, that's at this high vibration, I feel that too. And so I can feel my family members, I can feel loved ones, I can feel animals. And so when you awaken beyond just your five senses, your ordinary existence, you can feel into the bonds, and you know how people are actually genuinely feeling, and you don't need the obsessiveness. You don't need the constant checking in to feel safe and secure. You also don't need the lies. You don't need to engage in the gaslighting and the manipulation, because you can feel somebody's pure intentions. That's when you're really awake, is when you can feel how they really feel, regardless of what's happening on the surface. You can feel when somebody's trying to come in as a potential romantic interest, even though they're masquerading perhaps on the surface or keeping it cool, that it's a different type of relationship. And as a result, you can feel when your partner is doing the same. You can feel energetically when your partner is soliciting the affection and the attention of another being, and they're doing so from a subconscious mechanism that is helping to bolster their self-concept, helping to improve their quality. I talk about this in my client work when it's applicable, and it's not always, but some people, I see this a lot with anxious attachment, although avoidant attachers can do this too. I see that there are these subconscious interplays whenever they feel, especially for the anxious attachers, they feel like their partner is leaving them or is losing interest. Then all of a sudden they will look for ways to become more desirable or magnificent in their reality. And they'll tell their partner that as a way to sort of like posture, as a way to like a bird puffing up and saying, well, I'm attractive to somebody else. Why don't you see me as the same as this other person? This introduces threat and insecurity into the dynamic. And so anxious attachers in particular will kind of do this posturing sometimes and engage in the soliciting of affection or attention to triangulate against the partner that they're actually madly in love with, to increase the perceived value in that partner who they're actually madly in love with eyes. And when they do that, they actually create an insecurity. This is not high vibrational love to do that, right? This is self-sabotage. This is karmic chains that are binding you. And when you're early in the awakening journey, and this is just one example out of many of how these patterns can take hold, you don't know that the love that you're offering and the love that you are taking is actually bound to a shadow love. You don't understand that. You don't understand why all of a sudden you want to reach out to an ex. Why? Why now? Really? Why now? You don't understand why now all of a sudden you want to then go grab drinks with that ex or dinner with that ex. Oh, we're just friends. That's what you're saying to your partner, right? We're just friends. Don't worry. You don't understand why you feel compelled to do certain things, because you're acting from a shadow part of your conscious, the unconscious or the subconscious. And when we talk about making the subconscious conscious, this is what we're talking about. Illuminating with clarity and understanding what you're actually doing in these interdynamic connections, these interrelational connections and the dynamics. You need to understand why you are showing up the way that you're showing up. Why are you so afraid when your partner has a friend outside of you? Why are you so afraid when insert the blank? But when you are early in the journey, you don't spend time thinking and reflecting about that. You just are acting. That's what being in your shadow is all about. That's what shadow work is helping you to talk through some of those patterns of how you're sabotaging your connections. You should be building love, safety, and connection. You should be able to feel that love, safety, and connection, even if your partner is not obsessively into you, right? Having a secure bond means having a degree of interconnection and autonomy. But when you're insecurely attached, except for dismissive avoidance, that's very, very threatening. And also fearful avoidance, unless they're the ones that are in control of the connection. But for an anxious attacher, having autonomy outside the bond is extremely threatening. Why? Because they need a merging to feel safe. Why? Because when their partner absorbs into them and vice versa, and also some fearful avoidance, what happens is they have a story in their mind that they're not looking anywhere else, because their attention is all on me. I have known some very prolific cheaters that have multiple people and spend a lot of time, almost every hour, I don't want to say minute, but every hour of their day attending to one of their partners. And they're so successful at this that even their wives don't know. And even their mistresses don't know how many people there actually are because they feel as though they're receiving a lot of attention. So that deludes them into feeling that they're safe because how could my partner be cheating? They're spending so much time talking to me. You'd be surprised how fast those little thumbs are. Okay. And so when somebody has a vacancy in their heart or when their self-concept is very wounded, they need a lot of confirmation from the outside world. And that's a hole. That's like a black hole inside. That's a vacuum that's just like, because they're never convinced. And when they're never convinced, they're always seeking, they're always grasping, and they're always insecure. And very often they struggle with addiction. It could be, I can't say it without getting my TikTok flagged, but it could be, addiction of the needing excessive touch, needing excessive attention from whomever they're, interested in, whatever gender, whatever flavors they're interested in. It could be excessive because they deep down inside have a hole, they have an ache inside. And so they're using other people to feel that they're whole. Thank you, Genevieve, for the gift. I appreciate that. They're using their success. They throw themselves into work. They throw themselves into gaining a mountain of wealth. There's nothing wrong with human connection and an abundance of. There's nothing wrong with wealth, right? There's nothing wrong with it. But when you are coming at it from a wounded place, it chains you. It binds you. And when because when there's a disruption, when there's any sort of question of whether or not the opportunity is really going to come through, whether or not you're going to keep that person, all of a sudden you're in this state of mind that you're completely dysregulated. Some of you can turn completely non-functional. So then you turn to substances to cope, or you turn to other things to sort of numb yourself out. And as a result, what happens is you just repeat the cycles over and over and over again until you work with somebody like myself or somebody other that works for you, and you start to really do that healing work. And what I have found, the differentiating factor between those who are really ready to heal and those who are still caught in the cycles is that when the relationship ends, when the opportunity, the job, the career crumbles, right? When that is taken away, are they still engaged in the personal work? Or is the inquiry into themselves, is the investment into hiring somebody if they need that support, if they want to shortcut their success, right? Does that go away too? Because people who are genuinely on the road of healing, even when the stimulus is gone, even when the pain, the pressing pain is gone, they still engage in the process of asking themselves, how did they get there? And how do they not get there again in the future? Because they recognize that it's a cycle. They recognize even if they go to a different person, a different career, it's like fundamentally the same. The landscape may change, but the people and the names may change, but the people inside the patterns that they're building with you don't really fundamentally change. And then you waste time, in my opinion, because then you have another 5 years to get through the dating process and to get exactly where you're at right now. You just have to do it all over again with another person. You go through the honeymoon phase and find yourself having similar enough conversations that make you feel like we might be in a simulation and I might be in Groundhog Day because it seems like my life is just repeating on a cycle. And you would be correct. When you're early in the journey, you don't necessarily see those interplays, right? But as you awaken, what you do is you start to break these chains of karma that are binding you to your shadow self and somebody else's shadow self. And the love and the bonds that you create change. What you accept into your life changes. Who you accept into your bedroom changes. Who you say yes to for clients, if you're an entrepreneur in a service-based industry, changes. Who you actually agree to be business partners with changes. What career you do changes because you no longer are feeding the shadow. And when you're feeding somebody's shadow and you're feeding your own shadow, you're connecting from a position of toxicity, of woundedness. And that's the beauty of all of this because it's giving you an opportunity for transcendence if you know how to work with it. And when you actually level up, you change your vibration. you change your essence, you change your auric field, you are literally no longer attracted in the same way to the people that don't change. You're no longer attracted. When you actually become securely attached, you're no longer attracted to anybody with an insecure attachment as a romantic partner. Yes, perhaps as a friend. There's distancing, right? You start to distance yourself. You don't take on other people's healing in the same way. You don't become responsible for their journey in the same way if you're working through codependent patterns. You hold yourself in high regard, and you understand that if somebody is not ready to come out of hell and they're hell-bent on dragging you there no matter what, then at some point you're going to love yourself and you're going to say, I'm going to love you from afar. And the way that you are offering a relationship to me doesn't work for me. And if they have a reaction by examining their own behavior through you, then you let them have that reaction, because that's important feedback. That's important feedback to give somebody. The relationship that you're offering does not work for me. There is no negotiation when you're at that place of understanding. And if somebody has a reaction to that, then let them have that reaction. And when you break the codependency, you don't feel bad for their reaction, especially when your delivery is kind, respectful, and constructive, and calmly assertive. This doesn't work for me. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you have a self-concept that's wounded, that says, I'm not allowed to really want, I'm not allowed to actually have my needs met, then you feel bad for having needs. You feel bad for having desires. You feel shame is a better way to say it. But when you're early in the awakening, you might not have that internal emotional attunement to yourself. That's what my attunement masterclass touches on. But it's more than that. Attunement to other people and attunement to yourself. When you have an insecure attachment style, you struggle with that. So link is in the bio for that if you feel called to the attunement blueprint. And so what happens is when you have this self-concept, you're afraid to say what you really need because you're afraid of that reaction. You're afraid of their, let's say, narcissism being wounded by the truth. So instead of owning your truth, right? Instead of doing that, you feed their shadow. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have wanted more. You're right. I shouldn't have criticized you. You're right. And you become smaller and smaller and smaller until you become destroyed. And at the end of that journey, then you encounter people perhaps in the comment section that say, why did you choose that relationship? And you say, a lot of people say, well, I was a victim to it. They turned into somebody else. They did this to me. And I would say, yes, they did. And you said yes every single time. Because at the end of the day, your self-concept wasn't strong enough to say no. Why wasn't it strong enough? We need to heal that. So you don't find another person like that, because it's just going to repeat. If it's really about them, and I just made a video about this, about being a narcissist magnet. If it's really about them, then why do you have so many narcissists in your life? One after another. In extreme cases, not everybody goes through the chain. When you break the cycle, you stop being attracted to narcissists, right? You see it. You see what they're offering. And you're like, that doesn't work for me. And you get out early. But when you're scared to actually speak your needs, to drive your avatar with authority, with power, with conviction, with self-love, right? When you're scared to do that, you make yourself small because you want them. You want them to love you. You want them to give you what you're wanting, which is an illusion. You want them to give you a love that's never going to come. That's its own form of emotional unavailability through self-abandonment. And when you actually start shining the light of awakening, you drive away people like that, first of all. Like you actually, when you really start respecting yourself, very early on, you drive away people that are going to destroy you. And if you don't, then you make the right decisions to get them out of your life before disaster comes. Because you start shining so brightly in your self-love, your authority, your conviction, your everything, right? That's how you know you've really healed. When you have the past, people becoming scared of you, avoiding you, because you're just stating your needs. If you want a relationship with me, perfect. This is what I need. If you want to hire me, this is a salary I need. See, when you value yourself, a job that's really not going to value you is going to say, nope, sorry, we don't have it in our budget. Sorry. And they are telling you on their terms how you can make yourself smaller. Within reason, of course. There are, budgets. Within reason. You have to see both sides. You have to attune to both sides. It was like I was at this crystal store local to where I'm at, lovely place. And I was waiting in line and to make my purchase. And there was this woman who came in and she was talking to the owner about a job. And it was like, in her mind, this is how I perceived it. I don't have any information beyond what I saw. But in her mind, it was like she really thought perhaps that she was a good match for the location. So she was like really enthusiastic about asking for a potential position. But when the owner said, we don't have any positions because it's a small shop and because it's me and my partner and we, run things and it doesn't make sense. This is like the busiest we get. The person that was trying to get the job was deflated whenever they heard this. They were like, you could hear the tone shift in their voice. And they were like, almost as though they had been manifesting, like, this is my job. This is my job. This is me. This is me. This is me. And then they hear from the shopkeepers, there's no job available. Sorry, this doesn't work for us. And the feeling, the energy shift in the person that was going for the job was so deflated, like, oh, okay, all right. And they had another conversation about doing some acupuncture and the person trying to get the job was like, it's just, I'm in a really hard position right now. And almost as though they were pleading, to get this job that didn't exist. And this is a lack of attunement, actually, at its core, because every relationship is a negotiation. And the person wanting the job was fixing in their mind, this was my interpretation, that they needed it, they deserved it, that they were the right fit, only to find out that the shopkeeper wasn't attuned to that same reality. And so you can ask for things like a raise, right? But if there is actually not attunement to a matching of needs, then it's going to break down. And you can still love and respect yourself and value yourself and make the appropriate decision. That's why I say everything's kind of an imbalance. It's not so black and white. It's like, well, I want this raise, and if they value me, then they should, find the money for it. That's not attunement. Like, you want to be attuned. That's healthy attachment. You're attuning to other people in your life. You're attuning to the opportunities. You're making sure that it's bi-directional. And you don't want to be the one that's like taking with no attunement. You want to make sure that it's a give and a take, because that's a high vibrational connection. That's one that's not vampiric, right? If you're just taking for yourself and only thinking about your own needs, that's a vampiric connection, whether or not you realize it and recognize it as such. And so when you're really attuning to, I'm providing something of value and they want what I'm providing, and vice versa, right? And it's a match, then you allow yourself to create and manifest in your life with high vibrational connections. But when you don't speak up, when you ignore what you need, you ignore what somebody else needs, and you chain yourself to this story or the outcome that you desire, whether or not it's an illusion, whether or not it can really come into manifested realities, that's where your personal work needs to really be focused. And so when you focus on your self-concept and how you're creating in your world and your reality, you can shift your entire world to maintain these beautiful, beautiful connections, because that's what we all want, right? We all want the best of the best, and the way that it can manifest in our own frameworks of desire. And that could be relationships, family, children, jobs, careers, businesses, but we want a great experience. Very few people who I've talked to, at least, maybe you would have a different opinion, says, yeah, I'm really going for hell. I'm really going for this repeating karmic BS, this cycle that's just sending me into an early grave and, sending me into this alcoholism and all sorts of stuff. Very few people sit down consciously and say that they want an experience like that. We all deserve to live this incredible life, but it's often our shadow side that prevents us. And so when we understand how the edification to the self matters, the relationship to the self, it's actually the root of everything. It's the root of your creation. Understanding your desires and being able to execute on those desires in a healthy, high vibrational way is the crux of self-mastery, I would say. All right, so now I'm going to take some questions, some comments in the chat. If you have some, by the way, thank you all for your likes, for your gifts. I really, really appreciate it. And let me take a couple of questions. Who do we have? All right, Jay Goody. Nice to see you, Jay Goody. It's been a while. I just found out that my twin flame listens to right-wing stuff and I'm struggling. Is it true? This is funny because politics are a very worldly thing. You know, we're talking about twin flame divine connections, right? And then we get lost in the worldly stuff, like the political beliefs, the culture, the language, the body type. These are all worldly things that ultimately we are transcending out of. So the universe is going to send in the package of something like a 1111 where I'm at, in the package of something like a twin flame connection to help you see how that's not love. You can have compatibility issues that can be deeply offensive to you from an ideological perspective, right? But at the core of it, when you really become securely attached, just a general opinion, you can let other people have their beliefs and it doesn't impact you. It doesn't challenge your internal world because you understand that that's their affiliation, and their affiliation has nothing to do with your own affiliations. But when you are attempting to build codependent relationships, there's an over-identification of what they believe, and it matters a lot when you are coming at it from codependent patterns. You need your person to merge with you in a way that feels coherent, in a way that feels connected. And what that means is that for a lot of people, they can't have certain beliefs. And this is the foundation of a codependent relationship. They can't have their own desires. They can't have their own needs without approval with their other half. They can't have their own friends. And so the twin flame journey is going to help shake you out of some of those dynamics. And it could manifest as vastly different political ideology. And you could say, well, this is clearly right, though. And I would say your version of right and wrong is very dogmatic and is emblematic of a materialist reductionist binary society where all things are right and wrong and can be characterized into dualism, the white and the black, the male and the female, the right and the wrong, the yes or no. This is binary structure. It's dualism. And expanded consciousness and expanded love actually transcends that and says your belief set does not define you and does not actually impact how I feel about myself or the love and the connection that we have. And that's why twin flame journeys can be so dramatically opposed with age differences, with cultural differences, with religion differences, because it's helping you to transcend, this is right. This is what love is. This is what attraction is. And it's breaking you out of that. So I wasn't laughing at you, Jay Goody. It's just, I find it like politics are a hot topic right now. And it's like, are you on the right side? Are you on the wrong side? And I found that actually quite endearing for it to be in your twin flame connection. So, okay, who else do we have? 33, Maggie. Yes, thank you so much for the gifts. I really appreciate you. Okay. How about when you feel what they feel, you understand it and you have cognitive empathy? And Andrea, I don't know if you are responding to somebody else. I'm just going up for a second. So usually, I believe that empathy is a very important part of understanding somebody. But when you really hold your own, right? You hold your own. You don't let your empathy destroy you. And so oftentimes when people are coming from codependent connections, and I'm not quite sure if this is what your comment is alluding to, but oftentimes when somebody has like an insecure attachment style, they feel the vulnerability of that person. They feel the vulnerability of, let's say, like an abuser, right? They feel after like very intense bouts of acting chaotically and inappropriately, they'll see the wounded child inside. And then they'll identify with that wounded child and they'll say, it's okay. I'm going to forgive you because I have empathy for you because I'm identifying with the wounded child. You're identifying with yourself through them, but what you're doing is you're taking little parts of them and you're saying, how you treat me is okay because I'm identifying with a part of myself inside you, and I'm calling that empathy. But actually, it's dysfunctional love. That's a dysfunctional love. That's you trying to save yourself and another person that is not regulating themselves and perhaps not doing the work. So where discernment comes in, and where self-love comes in, and I do have a masterclass about self-love, and I talk about things like giving your power away in my True Love Masterminds group. The link is in the bio for that. It's a monthly membership and gives you access to the vault of courses that are already there. I think there's like 15 so far, and a private forum, and new courses are released every month, but we work on things like this, right? So what happens is you love somebody because you're loving a little part of yourself, and you're ignoring or denying that the relationship as a whole doesn't work for you. And also because you're taking responsibility for their healing journey, and you're not allowing them to actually confront themselves by walking away in some cases, by quote unquote rejecting them because their pain of rejection you feel because of your own pain of rejection. So it keeps you locked in. This is why I represent this with a chain. It keeps you chained to circumstances and people that are ultimately driving you into dangerous, in some cases, territory, but not all, dark territory, or despair and breakups and devastation. And because somebody's in their shadow self and they're not, some people in their shadow self are not at all on the self-mastery journey, because everybody else around them is sort of doing the work and holding the emotional labor. And so what you're doing is, when you're feeding somebody's shadow, is you're saying, oh, it's okay. I see you. I empathize with you. And I'm going to allow whatever you do to me. And people who are really, really disordered, like actually disordered, will do anything to you. And then some of them, it can get really, really dark. You know, it actually can. And you trying to love and respect yourself that is like rejection to them. And so then it amplifies and it escalates. And so you have to be careful with pathological empathy. You have to be careful with empathy that destroys you. Because when you abandon yourself and you don't respect yourself, what you're doing is you're saying, my needs don't matter. My needs for safety don't matter. My needs for fidelity don't matter. My needs for connection don't matter. My needs for touch don't matter. My needs for calm, harmonious place. My needs for a co-partner, my needs for somebody who is going to share the weight of child rearing or the financial weight don't matter, right? So you're abandoning yourself and you're allowing somebody else's pain to run the show. Somebody else's pain at their wounds and not being able to see themselves run the show. And you're preferentially saying, we're going to prioritize your pain instead of being the adult in the room. Instead of being the regulated, wise one that says, this doesn't work for me. I understand you're having a reaction about it. We can talk through it, or perhaps let's go to therapy together, because it looks like you're being very dysregulated. And if you don't have the regulation skills, therapy is a great way to learn them. You cannot act like this in our house. You cannot act like this towards our children. It's not okay. If you keep doing this, then there's a consequence. If you keep doing this, then I'm going to have to leave. There is no negotiation. You can see somebody's wounded self and not over-identify with it and accept the entire package of the disaster that some of those wounded selves are bringing you. And it can, when I say dark, I mean, it can get very dark. So you're giving yourself away to feed somebody's shadow because you don't know how to confront these patterns in yourself and in them. That's why working with somebody is really, really important. A therapist, depending on how dark it is, you might need like professional mental support for your partner, for yourself, to go slow and very gentle. You can work with a coach, but you need to be like kind of sound, in my personal opinion, to work with a coach and kind of study already in yourself. And if you're working with some of these patterns, it can be very challenging. So you're welcome to reach out to me and evaluate if working together is right. And I'll give you an honest answer of whether or not therapy would be better for you or whether or not you can handle a fast-paced transformation. It does change your life very quickly, but you have to be ready to integrate it and to anchor into healthy coping mechanisms. And sometimes it leads to disrupted relationships. If you're out of alignment, it can lead to divorces. It can lead to dissolution of partnerships, long-term partnerships. But if your soul is ready, then your soul is ready. And through our work, it comes together pretty quickly. Yes, Amy, you won't be attracted to a twin flame too. Yes, that is correct. If you really start doing the work and over a period of time, it's not instant. It's not like on a random Monday, I've had a major breakthrough and I've integrated this shadow work lesson. And so you lose the attraction for the twin. It's not, immediate like that. But when you really do the work and you level yourself up, you continue on the ascension journey. If your twin actually doesn't, because they're resisting the journey and using their free will to live in that resistance, and some people do, then yes, eventually you will outgrow your twin. I've lived it. Other people have lived it too. And it's remarkable because when they are showing up as their old self in the same clothes, in the same way of speaking, in the same life, in the same choices, right? Maybe some things have changed, but fundamentally it's the same, right? Their persona, their identifying persona, who they're emitting out into the world, the beacon, is fundamentally the same. Their personality hasn't grown. And as a result, their life is kind of fixed. You can see that. And when you continue on the ascension journey and you grow and you grow and you grow and you grow, and you really embrace those changes, it's inevitable that your life changes as a result. This is a powerful part of ascension. When you really ascend, you grow, you change. Who you show up as, that identity module that was previously installed, you take that and you say, I'm going to tinker with it. And this is what self-mastery is, right? This is what I help my clients with. You say, I don't know if I want to be that version, I think I'm tired of life like this. I think I'm tired of life like this. I want to live life like this. And I'm willing to invest in myself and make the sacrifices needed because it's sacrifices, right? You have to say no. You have to say no to some people's shadow. You have to say no to the karmic chains, and you're going to be tested, and the universe is going to tempt you back. And you have to show up differently than you've ever done before and show yourself to the past, show yourself to former loved ones, to current loved ones. And some people can't handle that. So they stay in their old self and they call it ascension, but they're actually still making the same choices, living in the same vibration, living in the same construct of reality. And they can claim a twin flame journey, but when you're really doing the work, it's evident. It's evident. And you will see somebody's life transform. If you saw me at the beginning of mine versus now, you wouldn't even recognize me on the street. I have some old people that check in sometimes. I wonder what they think. I was never able to come out talking about things like this. I was very in my shell. It's remarkable. So when you see people transform, they're on the ascension journey. And if your twin actually does not do the work, then yes, you will reach a point. And again, it's a gradient. You're going to reach a point where you're actually no longer vibrationally and physically attracted to them anymore. You might still care about them. You might still love them. And in fact, you will, because that love is never ending, but you're going to have a compassion. There's no longing. You're going to have compassion because you're going to literally, it's going to feel like this. You're going to be here, right? With your glow up, with your vibration, with your magnificence. And you're going to be looking at an old version of you, or you're going to be looking at your twin who is still in how you met them, right? That's still in the same state of mind, still doing the same with some changes. And there's not going to be the magnetism that drew you together like it did before, because you're no longer in this state. And people say, yeah, but the whole idea behind the twin flame journey is that if you do the work, then your twin does the work. And I say the universe respects free will. And there are those that do embrace the journey and grow together at their own pace in tandem secretly. They do that. Lots of twins do that. There are also other twin flame journeys where this doesn't happen, where literally one partner will stay in the confines of their old existence because they're too scared of the unknown. They're not ready. And the universe respects free will. And some of them feel it forever in their soul. Like there's a part of them that missed a voyage, that stood on the dock using their free will, their legs stood on the dock and watched the ship go away. And in that case, I believe that you have another twin flame, because the universe is not going to hold you back when you're really ascending. And that was my experience. and other people's experience as well. But it's a little controversial because it kind of goes against the whole ethos of what a twin flame journey is. It's only one soul that's split. I actually believe that your soul grows too, and that you don't stay in the same vibration. Because if you stayed in the same vibration, you wouldn't be expanding, you wouldn't be ascending. So your soul, the concept of a soul, also grows and it goes up the ladder. And so the idea that your soul is fixed, that the magnetism is fixed, especially when you are ascending, doesn't make sense logically to me. Like when you really analyze the structure of a twin flame narrative, you see like things actually, the scarcity mindset behind it seems to be driven from, how it feels, because that's what it feels like early in the journey. But it's like being in a building of a high rise. This is the ascension analogy, right? When you're starting off, let's say you're starting off in the basement level and you ascend to maybe the first floor. Well, if you don't know what the whole building looks like, then you would never know how tall it is and that there's a 56th floor. So you wouldn't dare try to go around preaching to everybody that level 1 was all there was. And that's what I feel that the early parts of the twin flame journey is about. It's like saying, this is the twin flame journey. We're on level 1 and this is the only level that exists. It's one soul split in 2 bodies and that's it. And this is the dogma. And that's the framework that locks it down. That is 3-dimensional consciousness. When you expand beyond scarcity, right? And you recognize that the universe is abundant, that is not going to hold you back and nor is it going to grape you. Right? The universe, you are a sovereign being. You have free will. You can say yes or no. There's a period of time that it appears that you're locked in, but you can say yes or no. That's part of your fundamental right as a sovereign creature, a sovereign being here in this incarnation. And because that's what injustice is. So we're saying that the twin flame journey takes away your sovereignty. No, that would be an injustice from the universal laws. And so as a result, you start to ascend beyond that framework that you learned and you recognize, oh, the twin flame journey might be a little different than how we were initially taught. And it seems that sometimes there's multiple twin flames, sometimes there isn't. Everybody has their own journey, their soul's evolution, and there are definitely multiple floors. There are definitely multiple parts of the experience. And if you've only just seen a part of it, then you wouldn't know about the other parts of it. So that's my take on the twin flame journey and how you can have more than one. All right, a couple more questions. Here we go. Yes, exactly, Jay Goody. That's exactly right. Yes, you'll still think about them and feel them, but you will have the ick. That's in the early parts of the leaving the twin flame journey. And so at some point you don't even feel them anymore and you don't think about them anymore. And you don't even have the ick. You just have this, it's a neutrality. The magnetism is gone. And ick response is the opposition of magnetism, right? It's the polarity. And that's what drives the separation and the exiting of the journey. But eventually that diffuses too in terms of energetics. And there's no attraction. There's no repulsion. There's no attraction. There can be curiosity. There can be compassion. There can be concern. There can be, wanting the best for them. But there's no attachment. There's literally like no unified attachment, no magnetism that's binding you together or driving you apart. Okay, Constance, my third eye keeps tingling. Welcome to the journey. If it's trying to open, how can I help it? So I actually like to work with crystals. Amethyst was very powerful for me when I was working with the opening of my third eye. And I would actually do a meditation where I would take the crystal and I would run it all the way down my chakra system. And I would stop it at each point. So I would stop it at my third eye. And then sometimes I would also spiral. As my clairsentience developed and my energy manipulation developed, so you can feel it. If you're new to it, it's sort of like Qigong, right? Is you can feel your own energy when you do Qigong. But if you don't have any experience in Qigong, you're not going to know what it feels like. When you feel your own energy, it feels like how did you describe it? It feels like a field that you can feel other than like touching your skin to skin. Like if you were to make an energy ball, right? You can do this with me if you want to, because it works, even if you're early on the journey. So you rub your hands together really fast and slowly bring that sensation down, right? Slowly pull your hands apart, slowly. And then feel in between your hands. And what you're going to feel is a field of energy. And you can play with it and make an energy ball if you still feel it. Some of you are only going to feel it just as your hands start to separate. That's okay. Eventually, you're going to be able to feel it all the way expanded where you can fill up an entire room. All right. This is what a meditation practice is really powerful for, is creating a experience of expanding your energy field, your awareness, your auric field. I do offer guided meditations once a month in my quantum shifting group. It's a private playlist, EC by Dr. C. I send these quantum meditations, so I open you up to multidimensionality. The first one, because it's brand new, was the white room meditation, where you have a guided meditation experience where you receive a quantum breadcrumb from your higher self, from another timeline, from your guides, by going into this completely white room. And you go to this podium where there's a book and you receive a message. And so the next one is going to be about accessing your highest timeline that's available to you in this particular structure of reality. You also get access to my private vault of recordings about being a quantum shifter and how to rebuild your internal framework to open you up to shift realities in the flesh, not just supporting your consciousness, which a lot of people can do. So when you expand your energy, what you're doing is you are creating the electromagnetic resonance inside of you to hold in your physical form. And this is a big part of the awakening journey. If you're not there yet, it's okay. You're still welcome here. Come along for the ride and listen and learn, because this is an integral part of energy mastery and vibrational mastery, which is central to manifestation, being able to feel your own vibration, and also quantum shifting. So, but those are distinct, okay? Manifesting gets you to one world and one outcome, and quantum shifting gets you into different multiple manifestations depending on how you've structured your reality. So when you start to awaken, you expand your energy field, and that's what you can feel using crystals. Crystals accentuate this, in my personal opinion. And you can take a crystal and you can hold it over your third eye, or remember where all of this started, if you're already attuned to your own energy in your hands, you don't even need the crystal. And you can spiral like this. You can spiral and open. But when you do this, especially early in the journey, you want to be sure that you're also cleansing and making sure that you're not receiving interference. There are tricksters on the spiritual awakening journey. If you know, you know. I'm not going to go into it here, but some of you have some disempowerment lessons that you're still working through. I did. And so you're going to have lessons of discernment, lessons of intuition, and you're going to have trials and tribulations, awakening by fire. You know, it can be really intense. You can have a lot of trickster energy around you. And so you want to be sure that you're cleansing your third eye and practicing discernment. And the way you can do this is when you are cleansing, you are closing your eyes and imagining that you're like purifying with a white light is a good way to visualize it. You don't have to visualize it this way, but you need some form that your mind is anchored into, a thought construct, like changing the color from black fuzz to white to purify, to manifest a purification of your third eye. So you're locked in to frequencies and information that's actually going to serve you. But keeping in mind that if you have any sort of discernment issues, self-powerment issues, then you're going to have to go through some confusing territory to develop that skill within. You can't just rely on manifesting. Potentially you could. Potentially you could, if you're a quantum shifter, you could manifest yourself as all the way healed, but sticking that and anchoring into that reality when you have these innate patterns that are sabotaging you without your awareness, you know, in your shadow. If you're manifesting yourself as being completely healed, but yet in your day-to-day interactions, you're still choosing unhealed people and you're still negating your needs and negating your desires, it doesn't matter what you're manifesting, because the whole part of you is going to be recapitulating those karmic lessons. Okay. So that's why you have to have some guide, some mentor, or be working on yourself. If you're going solo, which I did, you can do it solo, but you have to be aware that Your constructed reality is reflecting something within that you need to work on, so you can't bypass it. You can't say, I don't want any challenges, and so therefore I'm going to manifest a super easy life for myself. That would actually not be to your highest alignment, in my personal opinion, because you get stronger by going to the gym. Yes, you can lay in bed and manifest yourself lifting weights in your mind. And there are some studies that show that there's positive impacts to doing that. But to get the best results and to actually get the lean physique that you are wanting, or the muscular physique, then going to the gym and combining that with your visualization is a powerful way. And I don't know if you can quantum shift to a world where you would just literally wake up one day and be buff. I'm testing the limits of quantum shifting presently in my own life. And I find some complications with just shifting drastically into a new world. And then I've had different versions of my body. Again, I talk about this more on my EC by Dr. C private playlist, $10 a month right now. It could change in the future, go up. It's not going to go down, but you can't just look at yourself in the mirror and see somebody vastly different. Changing your self-concept to that degree institutes what seems to be this physiological stress response that anchors you back into a old reality. That's just like anybody who's curious, like, can I just wake up wildly in a different reality? From my personal experience, it's extremely challenging. I have been in different versions of my apartment. I have had different versions of a key. I have had different versions of a mailbox, different neighbors. But being in a vastly different form and a vastly different world is extremely hard to anchor into when you are quantum shifting. So just laying down and meditating and visualizing that you're healed, that you're buff, that you're whatever it is, and not taking the appropriate actions in your material world doesn't seem to result in a crystallized form of your manifestation. It seems to disconnect you, because you're not integrating it into your material world. You're laying in bed, you're meditating, and you're visualizing. But the way you're showing up in your everyday world is still a wounded person. Well, your everyday world is going to reflect that with some interference, right? You're going to get some choices of some different options, but if you're still actually unhealed, you're going to keep choosing here. That's the whole point of it. Okay, so... Oh, thank you, Jay Goody. Yes, I know when I had that realization about myself, oh my God, you are trying to save yourself and another person who's not doing the work. It was a game changer. It helped to release me from some of the soul contracts that I was really stuck in and accepting behavior that really was not in alignment with my value system. All right. Yes, exactly, Jay Goody. He's making changes, but he's still so insecure and I can't cheerlead him out of it. Unfortunately, understanding when somebody's journey is their own is an important part of discernment, and understanding that they have to meet you as a partner. If you really want a partner, they have to meet you in their healing journey. You can never force heal anybody. You can help them. You can guide them. You can give them information. You can lead. You can go first and you can model it. But ultimately, they have to be the ones using their free will to go along with you and to do that inner work. And what I have learned about those with insecure attachment style is that you cannot reassure them out of their insecure attachment style. There's something about the way that they're built, the way that they're processing the world, that they literally can't hold it in their nervous system. They can't hear how much you love them. They can't hear how much you're dedicated to them because they have a story running in their mind and a dysregulation in their nervous system that often links back to early childhood experiences that is still unresolved. So they're carrying these chains and binding you to them, whether or not you are aware of it. They're still dragging you into a constructed world in their mind and treating you as such, treating you as like, why are you abandoning me? Why are you doing this when you're just trying to live, another part of your life? So it's quite complicated. I work a lot with attachment styles because it's so integral to understanding a foundation that actually gets us to these other expanded consciousness techniques. And I happen to stumble into it quite accidentally, but I found that it's the perfect bridge. So once you master like insecure attachment styles, it helps you master manifestations. It helps you master quantum shifting. And it's a beautiful bridge to an awakening and a consciousness expansion. Not everybody follows that whole line, but oftentimes people do. Okay, who else do we have? I appreciate you too, Constance. Thank you so much. Oh, Shauna, hey, Shauna, nice to see you. What an old timer. I love seeing old friendly faces pop in. I didn't see you here. I love that. Dr. C helped me through my dark night of the soul journey. I'm forever grateful for her. Thank you. You have been here since practically day one on my other channels. So I'm sure your journey has progressed in beautiful, positive ways. Okay, so I invited somebody I didn't mean to. I don't know who I invited, but I just hit a button on my screen. Thank you, everybody here. Thank you so much for your presence, for your energy, for your likes. If you feel the call to work with me, check the link in the bio. But if you don't, it's okay. You're still welcome here. And I love your engagement, your comments. So I want you to know that whether or not you work with me in an energy exchange or just have your presence here on my channel, you are welcome. Thank you. And I will see you next time.